Hello, and welcome to Postcards from a Soul and Her Human. I'm the human Gina. Hello out there to all who are listening. I appreciate your presence as always. It is a really snowy day today where I live, and it's really quite beautiful. Normally, I would be spending the day with my daughter and granddaughter, but it's a little too difficult driving conditions, so I'm home today. So I figured, well, let me do this because it's been on my mind. It's funny when as I really observe the process that I go through before I write or before I record a podcast episode or before I even work on my book, and I refer to my higher self as Gina because she's me. She's just in a different dimension, basically. And I'm learning that I'm getting closer and closer to her because the way I feel about her and the way I refer to her a lot these days is us instead of her, which is probably a part of my evolution. But whenever I notice that, either something will be on my mind or in my awareness that ends up kind of following me around. I think that's the way I put it before. It follows me around, and after a while, I sit with it and I, have a conversation with it and really find out what it is from it that I'm meant to glean or to do or to just understand or maybe just to know, which is something also that I'm learning to appreciate in my body or my psyche is this knowing that is settled in. Um, I used to believe in things that are good or in a future that was bright. I used to believe that I had this potential, and we're never ever really sure, and our bodies are shrouded with doubt and of course affected by our insecurities and everything else. But I've just gotten to a place where I don't believe anything anymore. I just know it. It doesn't require my will to remain positive or to think about positive things or to remind myself not to be negative. It is a natural second nature that is just settled into my body. And I don't really know when it happened, but I believe, well, I know that it's all due to the process that I went through. I went through this incredible process, this transmutation of my energy, which affected my mind and then my actions. And I don't know. I said once, I think I said it out loud once that every single podcast that I record, everything I write is all about exactly the same thing. It's just from a different experiential perspective. It's I take a different approach in talking about it. And I didn't even know myself that I was doing this until one day I had the realization that everything I talk about is basically about gaining self-awareness, which is the gateway into loving ourselves, and which is the gateway into unconditional love, which is the frequency that allows us to really co-create the life that we dream of. And it's all a process that we have to go through. And this is what I want to talk about. And it's so funny how that segue, I don't know. I'm always marveling at how things connect without really me understanding how. And I've been told this several times that just because you can't see the way doesn't mean you're not going there. And I think that's the most important lesson that I've learned and that I've integrated, I think is a better word, because I don't think about it anymore. I just know that if my body tells me something, and if that feeling stays more than briefly, that it's the truth. And I don't have to question its origin. I don't have to question its validity. I don't have to question anything. It's just something that I now know. And this is the ethereal body affecting, or I don't want to use the word controlling, it sounds wrong, but emanating from the human mind, from my human mind and body. The ethereal me has full access to the human me. And this is really the most remarkable part of this whole process is I went from being this incredibly insecure. I didn't know I was insecure, and I want to make sure that point is made, because I always felt very strong and very purposeful, very intentional. I was very aware mystically. I had always been interested in metaphysics, and I read every book about the paranormal and about intuition and about, oh my gosh, I spent a lifetime studying this. And I learned something recently that really was useful again, and I'll share it with you. And I think I mentioned before, in my social media, which I do look at once a day, I'm not much of a screen time person. I never have been. I don't share anything personal on social media. I never have. I didn't, it's not anything I ever connected to. My generation, we didn't grow up with it. So, it's different than the current younger generation, where technology is an extension of their body. But I lost my train of thought. This is something I do often. But well, let me just talk about the process again, and hopefully that'll come back to me. But going through this process of integrating or learning or trusting my body is basically what it is. So the insecurities that I used to have, I thought that I was this in control with it person, and I didn't understand until I fell apart energetically at the end of my marriage, that I had no idea, no clue what was actually possible by way uh, of having a life where you felt in control. I was I basically lived in a chaotic vortex of my own uh, of my own necessity, in order to get me to the place where I crossed a threshold into my ethereal life, and I never looked back. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm always looking back because I'm reporting on what I learned. But I mean, as far as my energy goes, I'm always moving forward, or actually ascending. And I think this is really important this is what I was talking about earlier, important to understand that you don't know what you don't know when you're in the lower vibrations. And until you have, or well, I should just speak in the first person, until I had this experience where I, in my opinion, or the way I would describe it, ascended my lower self, I had no idea how deeply in trouble I was. So now that I'm in this energy where I had just have this trust in my body, and I know this is part of my particular soul's journey in this earthly body, in this earth realm, and we each have our own. And I was given a piece of advice through the tarot a long time ago that said, no one can follow you. And what I now understand that to mean is the process that I went through to get where I am is very unique. It's not special, it's not better, it's just unique to me. So where I might say, this is why I would never counsel anyone on how to go through this. It's almost it's not it just would cause more confusion, because the what I went through is very unique to me and to my soul's mission in this lifetime, in this earthly incarnation. And we all have our own path to follow. And this is probably a really good warning, or not warning, but just a notification to be aware of, that if you're working too hard externally to find your way inward, I mean, that's an oxymoron right there. If you're looking externally to find your way inward, those are two conflicting things. I mean, that says it right there. But if you're reaching too far externally to find, peace within yourself, you are what you're learning are opinions and experiences from other people that may or may not match what you have to experience, or what you are meant to experience. And I'm not saying it's wrong to do it, because I learned recently that everything that we're interested in has to do with our purpose. So the fact that I read all these books on, spiritual mediums, and even the paranormal, which I had a fascination with that for a long time. In everything that I've read and have learned has built a foundation for this integration that I'm going through right now. So if you're reaching out or learning externally, you're certainly not wasting your time. My only point is that it's the answers are not there. What you're learning basically, or you're building the foundation in your body for this process, your unique process to take place. And that's one of the most interesting things that I've learned about this is I wanted to be a life coach. I did, I got my certification. I talked about this. I built a website. I thought this was going to be my future, and nothing happened. And now when I think about it again, I'm like, well, with intention, I can create what I want now. I wouldn't want to do that again. And not because I don't want to help people. It's because what I have to offer is really kind of shallow. I can offer you my experience, which I'm doing broadly through this microphone, but I can't really guide you. You have to find that inner guidance. You have to connect to that inner guidance within yourself. And basically, all I talk about is our intuition and our body, and how our body and our gut tells us all we need to know. And by clearing the way to listen and to learn the language of resonation, which is the body's vital language. And what I mean by that is what comes up into your awareness, if it resonates or connects with you, that's the truth. This is what I'm saying. So it's such a fascinating thing to observe real time. I mean, I don't have to go 10 years in the future and look back and say, wow, I realized what was happening. I'm realizing it as it's happening. And that's the benefit of this broad, high perspective. Is I don't have to be too deeply affected by anything that happens in my life. And I can go backwards in time and see all the devastation that I lived through and its purpose. This is perspective. This is the integration of our life experiences that allows us to ascend above our lower selves. And I'll talk about this as often as it's relevant to the content, but I just want that to be understood. We reaching outward is fine to build a foundation, but to rely on, and there was a saying, and I can't remember where I heard it from, because I always try to give credit to where I hear things, and I must say that I've kind of figured out what I'm doing here, what my purpose is on this microphone. And I realized that my whole life has prepared me for this. I talked about how I didn't connect with schooling or formal education. I never was a seeker of information, of like, I don't know. I didn't want to accumulate knowledge through school. I always felt not an aversion, but I just never connected to it. Whenever I had to learn something, I micro learned it. When I went to college and I took a couple of classes to get me, so I'd have practical skills on a computer, because, the internet didn't come into, the world until after I was an adult. I mean, I'm an older person. So you younger people, you don't know that. You've always had the internet. I took some classes to learn how to use a computer, micro training. It got me to the next step, which got me where I needed to go. So I've realized my entire life I've been micro training. I've never really had a field of study that was an expert in. And this was all part of the design of my human experience, because I was not to be caught up in any one thing. What I am meant to do here, and I've created a term for it, or I not created it. I borrowed a term from the scientific community, actually from the mechanical engineering community, which is an unlikely title. But I refer to myself as a transducer. I take in information and I transduce it out to the world. And this is what my body, the expansion of my body is for. The ascension of my energy is so I can accommodate the information that's being awakened or sent into my body through the rays of the sun or the gamma rays from the universe. So I refer to myself also, and playfully, I refer to myself as an experiential physicist. What a hard ass title for somebody who never went to school. But it has nothing to do with learned knowledge. It has everything to do with the fact that well, let me back up. Physics is a study of energy and matter. And I had to look this up because this experiential physicist just kept sticking in my mind. I actually wrote an article a while ago on my website called Resonation, where I refer to myself as having that experience as an experiential physicist. I don't study matter in wave from a scientific perspective. I study it from an experiential perspective. So my experience in this world with the energy that's coming into my body, and I've been made very aware of this by my soul team, that this is what my purpose is right now, at least in this lifetime right now. And it will, I believe it's going to expand when I am connected with my twin flame, or my human counterpart, who is, when once we connect, we have another purpose together. I was told that once I get to that place in my future, I won't work for a while, was how it was put, which in my mind means I probably won't record or write for a while. I'll have a whole other thing going on. But basically that, all of this, everything that I've gone through has brought me to this place where I am, I lost my train of thought again. Forgive me, but I'm definitely have been going through an ascension period lately. And it's funny how scatterbrained I can feel sometimes, and other times anyway. But basically what I'm trying to say is that, um, part of my purpose right now, and I see I'm able to come right back to it, so I guess I shouldn't apologize. Maybe I can fake it till I make it. But is to transduce information. And I'm using the word transduce because a transducer takes one form of energy and transduces it into something else. So that's how I kind of see or feel what I'm doing. And the experiential physicist, which is what I was talking about, that term just dropped into my awareness, and it feels right because I'm experiencing this energetic expansion, and I'm experiencing everything that's coming into my body, and I'm translating it into a vocabulary which I transduce out to the world. So it's really kind of interesting to put a label on what I'm doing, although it really maybe doesn't fit super well. But I guess to my brain, it makes sense. It's something that helps my brain um, embrace what's happening, because I'm two beings right now. I'm this ethereal being and this human being, and what I'm doing, what I have been doing with all the learning that I've absorbed into my body over the years, is built a foundation for all this to happen. So, what I started to say when I went on this train of thought is that the saying that I heard that really resonated was that when we search for spiritual knowledge, we oftentimes mistake the raft or the boat for the shore. And it took me a minute to realize what that meant. But basically, we get so stuck in the learning phase that we never move beyond it. We don't learn to apply what we have learned to our life, in the way we live. And I think that that's difficult to do, and I understand why people get stuck on that raft and they don't get off on the shore and then go on to the island of knowing and live this life in an escalated or an ascended manner, is because we are so stuck in our brains. And this is our brain having more to say than's necessary on this spiritual journey, which really has nothing to do with the brain. Although the brain, of course, assists, it's all about the body. So what I wanted to talk about today is exactly this process that we go through to get wherever we're going. And I want to make sure I mention again the series on Gaia TV called Initiation, with this lovely young man who remembers his former lifetimes, and he can recall what he knows from his many, many, many iterations of life. So not on just this planet or just in this life form, but way back hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, where he recalls what he knows. And I would highly recommend this to anybody who's curious in metaphysics, because this is the study of metaphysics, and this is something I've been studying my whole life. And what I wanted to say also there, and forgive me just the scatteredness, I'll get it all out, but was basically everything that we're interested in has to do with our purpose. So there's no mistake that we are learning about it. It's just maybe not maybe your future, it doesn't include exactly what you're learning about. but it will have an element of it. I think that's the way to put it. And you have to realize that when you become aware of something new, basically a new or higher thought form, you're building neural pathways in your brain, which basically set the roadway for that to continue and to expand. And this is something scientific that I've learned about the process that I've gone through to get where I am going. And I'll never say that that I'm there, because I don't know where there is. All I know is the journey to get there is what's important. So I'm not, I don't, I've dropped my expectation of any particular destination. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where I'm going. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. All that matters is that it resonates in my body, and that my body is comfortable with it, and that I go through whatever process I need to go through to get to that next step. We are here, and this is something that I've learned through this Gaia series that has really given me a vocabulary for what I'm going through. And I really appreciate what I'm learning through these micro learnings. And Gaia TV has become a classroom for me to put a name on what I'm going through. The first thing I watched was, oh, shoot, I can't remember what it was called. Um, oh boy, I did a podcast called The Science of Manifestation. Where he talked about this person talked about how we change our body and our surroundings by what we think. That was the first time I really got some insight into putting a name on what I have experienced, the experiential phases that I've gone through that have brought me to where I am now and will continue to bring me to wherever I'm going. So it's all about the process. And basically, we are here as ethereal beings in this human form, where we have these hands and feet and eyes and these senses and emotions and brain to have an experience. And in order to get it's almost like a video game. And I have referred to this before this way, this virtual reality that that we are participating in when we're living. And I say we, I mean me. I can only speak from my own experience. That we are here to have experiences, and that we are to go to through a process to get to a different level of knowing. And I'm not going to say learning, because formal learning gives us knowledge. But wisdom is not about knowledge, it's knowing. And it's completely different. Knowledge can actually become a barrier to knowing, because the brain wants to insist on what it has learned. And I went through all this effort to learn this, so it must be the truth. But the truth is only something that resonates in your body, whether or not it has an origin. So we have to go through this process. And it's so interesting how when I learn something about the process, I actually have an experience that accentuates it, and that gives me the experience, to go through this process so I can talk about it. And again, this is why I refer to myself as a transducer of information, because I believe that that's what I'm meant to do right now. Is my body is just a channel for me to take in this information, to translate it and understand it, and then to transduce it out to the rest of the world. And it's so fascinating to see how this works real time. So as I'm learning about this, I am having this experience almost at the same time. And I've had two recently that have really been remarkable. And oh my gosh, it's just so interesting to see this working. The first one was when I did the episode called The Feeling Center, which was the one before last. I think it was episode 29, where I talked about an experience that I had where I was looking for a job on the job boards online, and I went through this whole process of initiation into this new phase of my life where, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. My savings are getting to a certain point where I feel a little uncomfortable just continuing to use it. I don't want to go into my retirement. That's for later down the road. I'm too young to retire. It made sense to me to go find a job. And I talked about how I went on through this process of going online, creating business profile, and putting myself out there with all my experience as a manager and a trainer and a life coach and an entrepreneur, and all these things that I have done, because I thought that that's what I was going to be doing next. I'm going to go do something for a while. I was told I was needed somewhere for a couple of years. I thought that initially to mean, because this was a year and a half ago that I first had this message come to me, I thought back then I was going to need to find a job. Well, then it must mean that there's someone out there that I'm going to assist from a soulmate level, as I have been assisted by my ex-husband and my daughter and others in my life, to get me where I'm going next. So my brain and my body were prepared to do that, even though I didn't necessarily want a job. I had my own business. I don't want to go back to working for someone else. But I dropped my expectations and I went into this job market hopeful that I was going to find wherever I was meant to go. And I described this process again. And if you want more detail in that episode 29, but I ended up, and if you recall, I ended up sitting at my computer starting to look at jobs again, and the energy for it had just left my body. I mean, to the point where I felt ill, and I went and laid on my couch and I went to bed early that night. And what I realized the next day when I had this epiphany or realization that, oh, I'm no longer meant to look for work. That part's over. And either I did something I was meant to do, and I described the interaction with the headhunter and the post that I put out there and all that stuff, or I wasn't meant to do it at all. I really don't know for sure. Although my body's telling me there was some intention there, something happened that needed to, but it's over now. You don't need to look for a job. You're not actually going to work, is what I figured out. And then I don't think I mentioned this before, but during that week where I was having that realization, my brain was still kind of saying, well, don't discount the fact that your savings is dwindling and you don't, all this human stuff that I have to pay attention to. Don't forget about that. Maybe you do need a job. Just keep that in mind. But what happened during that time to ease my brain was I was getting messages through social media that resonated so profoundly in my body that I was able to let go of that little nagging brain telling me you probably need to look at this later, don't forget. And the messages that I received, there were two. One of them was, the divine timing is at work. There's no need to force it, which I think I mentioned before, but there were also two others, actually, now that I think of it. And both of the others basically told me to follow my heart and let everything else go, that all will fall into place. And these resonated so strong in my body after and a lot of times we see things and we hear things and we forget about them instantly. They don't resonate. But when something stays with you, a comment or a line or a phrase or a conversation or something you read, it's there for a reason. And these messages basically that said, follow your heart, everything else will fall into place. And then when I was still thinking maybe I need to find a job, even though my body said you're done, I got the message, there's no need to force it. Divine timing is at work. And I knew in my body that my brain can now relax. And it did. I totally let go of the need to look for a job. So much so that I totally changed my social media, my business profile to reflect only what I'm doing now, which is the experiential physicist's work and the transducer of information. And it no longer is there any information about my past work experience. I took it all off. It doesn't matter anymore. So what a ballsy move that is, right? That I was able to glean from my body's language through the dropping of my energy and then the messages that resonated with my body and my brain that eased my mind to allow me to let go of this. I was fast forward in this looking for a job, and it squealed to a halt with that energetic drop. And then by the morning, which is usually how long it takes me to process, I knew I no longer had to find a job. And then the messages helped my brain, who still wasn't quite sure, to also let go. That was the first experience. A week or so later, and this is literally in 2 or 3 weeks that this happened. And time, I have to tell you something else, that time in this higher frequency goes faster. I experience time faster than I ever have. And it goes by in a heartbeat. I'll be at my daughter's house. I'll get there at 10 a.m. I'll look at the clock and it's 4 o'clock and it feels like an hour. It is so fast. And I think around my daughter and granddaughter, since they are soulmates and they are also in the same frequency that I am, we all together, like time is a heartbeat. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in because it came into my mind. But the second experience I had with this process that we have to go through, and of course, this experience is no mistake. It comes right after the last one. So I have subject matter that I can transduce out into the world, and this is important for me to speak about. I didn't know what I was doing when I started this podcast. Now I understand. And it's so exciting to kind of do it with more intention. Um, the second experience of this process that I had to do with the first one. I let go of the idea of finding a job, and I was comfortable with it. I had no more concerns. My mind was not nagging me saying, well, a week later, are you sure? Because now you have no income. You're using your savings, which you said you weren't going to do. And what are you going to do after your savings are gone? You're going to go into your retirement? That's only, that whole blah, blah, blah your brain does that worries about everything that hasn't happened yet and likely never will. In this energy, I know I am taken care of. I know I will always have everything that I need. So if I'm worried about the future, it's just futile. It just takes away from this experience. And this is me choosing to stress in my life. If I chose to get a job despite my body telling me I didn't have to, I would have probably found a job because there's a lesson there for me. I don't have to work. If I'm going to choose to go work, that's me putting that stress on myself when I can trust my body and I don't have to get a job. How about that? So here's another example of that. I'm not worried about money. I know I'm going to have it when I need it. And I may not be a zillionaire right now, but it doesn't matter. I have everything that I need. And my lifestyle reflects it. My everything, the way I spend, the way I take care of myself is all reflected in that. I don't need to skimp and save. I have everything that I need and I even get what I want. But I don't want much. I'm not a materialistic person. I never have been. And it's all part of the design of my life in order to accommodate where I am right now. And this is so interesting to look back to see everything as it is and as it contributes to my purpose in this lifetime. And nothing is by chance or random or a mistake. So, anyway, the second example is I'm just sitting. I get up one morning. This is a week or two after I had this other experience. And I'm doing my morning workout, which is just energy exercises. And then I do some physical exercises. I do planks, squats, lunges, and then I do my meditation. And I'm not much of a meditator, and I'm not saying that to discount my ability. I feel like my life is a meditation. And when I sit with my eyes closed, I feel the same way I do when I'm sitting in my chair looking outside. It doesn't seem superfluous or not necessary. It just, I don't know. I guess the word meditation or the act of meditating, I feel like my body is always like my life is a meditation. And that may change when I have a relationship and more responsibility. But right now, anyway, I sit and meditate for 10, 15 minutes. And during this time, I had an idea. And it just popped into my head. And I said to myself, if this idea has merit, it will continue to emerge and then I'll pay more attention to it. But for now, I'm going to continue what I was doing, being present with what I was doing. And of course, within a few moments, the idea started to grow. By the time I finished my exercises and I was sitting in my chair drinking my tea, looking outside, it became an idea. And I said to myself, okay, I like this idea. Let's let it develop and we'll see where it goes. So by the time I went to the grocery store later that day, I was excited about this. And I'll tell you what the idea was. I started to think about it and it just started to emerge in my mind while I was doing my exercises that what if I used my retirement to pay off my home and then I would only need a tiny bit of amount of supplement from my retirement because I can draw Social Security come October when I turn 62. And I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I do that, my retirement's going to last 65 years because I need such a small amount from it. And I was all excited about this idea, but I said to myself, Gina, your head math is not the best. I'm not saying it as a, to diminish myself in any way, but I'm not good at head math. I come up with this idea and I have this number and then I go to do the math in a calculator and I'm so far off. I'm like, what the hell were you thinking? It's a form of entertainment. It's not something that I'm worried about, but I did the head math and I'm like, oh, this sounds really amazing. But I said to myself, go home later this evening. Let's get out our, let's do an Excel spreadsheet. Let's put everything in it. Let's see what our expenses are. Let's see what money we actually need. Let's see how Social Security reduces that amount, and then do the math whether it makes sense to pay off the house, and then draw from my retirement, or should I not pay off my house and draw the full amount I need, remainder of the supplement for my retirement? Now, keep in mind that I have 2 years in my mind. I was told several times that I'm going to be needed somewhere for 2 years or a couple of years. So in my brain, that's 2 years. So if I'm starting that 2-year clock at the end of this last of 2023, which is basically when I had the realization that I didn't need to find a job. Do you see what I'm saying? My brain my brain is playing a role here. The brain has 2 years. That's what I'm thinking. So 2 years is basically what I'm using, that I'm not going to work for 2 years. And I don't know what happens after that. I don't have to know. But for 2 years, I'm going to take care of myself. So how's this going to look on paper? How much do I need for my retirement? Because I'm going to use all my savings. Social Security, this is that much. And so I'm going through this process again of figuring out how I want to do this. And when I went home that evening and I did this all on paper, I was way off. I wasn't considering the fact that even though my mortgage was paid off, I still have to pay the interest and insurance, which comes up to a round number, which is not small every month. It's not that big, but it's not as small as I had hoped. So basically, what I thought I would need to draw is doubled now. So now I'm looking at it on paper, and I'm realizing that if I pay off my house, I have about this many years of my retirement. If I don't pay off the house, I have this many years. And it was only a difference of 5 years. So I'm thinking, okay, not as appealing. Maybe not such a great idea now that I'm looking at it on paper. And I just said to myself, well, just think about it and then, see how you feel about it. But it's not certainly what I thought it was. Doing the math. And during the time that I'm doing the math, I want to cover all my bases. So I go into my retirement account, which I do every couple of months, and I look at my balance there and I say, okay, here's what I have. So I can use it as a part of my equation to figure out how much retirement I'm going to have if I start to draw from it this year when my savings runs out, and then I can start drawing Social Security in October. So I'm, doing all that work. And I love figuring stuff like this out. It's really something I enjoy. So I'm looking at all these numbers and I'm like, okay, nothing's really resonating as a inspiration to go ahead and do this. So I kind of dropped it for the day. I slept on it that night. I went to my daughter's the next day and I was talking to her about it. And I said, you know what? I went through this whole process. I was all excited. And then I realized that maybe it doesn't really look as promising as I thought. And I told her, I said, I think I'm just going to let it sit in my body for the rest of the day. If it stays with me, it's something I'll do. If it drops away, which is what I've learned, then I'm not going to do anything. And it's funny, I mentioned to her as I was talking to her that day, I said, but it's so interesting. I opened my retirement account and when I looked at it, it was $30,000 more than when I looked at it literally 2 months before. 30,000, it had grown $30,000. And if you have a 401k and you have any amount saved, you know that the top end of it fluctuates, that it can go up and down by thousands of dollars. And so I don't really pay much attention to that. But this is more than has ever been in there. And this amount is more than I've ever seen it jump in that a period of time. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. I mentioned to my daughter, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. So then I go home that afternoon, I get in the shower and I'm getting dressed in my room and I'm standing in my room, halfway putting on my clothes, and I said out loud, oh, I get it. I said, I see what happened. I see what happened. And it was the most magical feeling. Oh my God, I can still feel it in my body. I said out loud, I said, I got to witness something we only realize if we're very, very fortunate way in the future. But I got to witness it and experience it real time. the process that I went through to get to this realization. And what this basically had the effect of doing was allowing my mind to totally relax and not have a moment's worry or concern about our future financially. What I realized in that moment was that whole process that I went through. I had the idea of paying off my house. I went through the process of the head math. I stayed with it for a day, went into the evening and did the math. Didn't really look as well, as good, whatever is right. Didn't look the same. The next morning, I slept on it, went to my daughter's, talked to her about what I had gone through and how I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I happened to mention that my account was $30,000 more than it had been before. And what I didn't realize until that moment is when I did the math on paper, I needed $30,000 for the next 2 years. Come on. How cool is that? Basically, I was taken through that process to show my brain, you have enough. Actually, you have more than you thought you had, and that more that you thought you had is enough to get you through the next 2 years. If I draw my Social Security and I use the rest of my savings. So how about that? That process that I was taking, that Gina brought me through enabled my brain to have no doubt now. My brain was completely on board with what was happening. I didn't have to worry. It's just so fascinating to see it in real time. So, of course, I completely let go of the idea of paying off my house. The energy to do it was completely gone. And I knew the purpose that it served. I was meant to go through that process to get to the point where I could see on paper that I was okay. It was almost like a master class in resonation. It was a master class in the process because my body is now so tuned into my intuition. She doesn't only use my gut, my intuition. She uses my physical body. The energy drop while I was looking for a job, that was not my gut. That was my body physically draining of energy while I was trying to do something. And I'm now so tuned in and aware of this language that I know to drop what I'm doing. I don't have to question it, even though looking for a job was what I really believed I was supposed to do. Not only for this ethereal purpose, but to have an income, because now I do not have an income. So, because my body is so tuned in to my human life, I was able to get that extra validation through this incredible process that I went through. Now, do I go back and look at my retirement again and say, oh, is that money still there? And no, I can let it completely go. It doesn't matter if that money's still there when I look at it next time. It doesn't matter. What the lesson here that I've learned through this integration of my ethereal self into this human body is I don't have to look back. I don't have to question it ever again. It has become part of the truth of what I know, of who I am. I don't have to believe. It's part of what I know now. It is a step on this journey that I'm taking. It is an ascension of my energetic body that I don't have to look back. That I can trust that I was shown that it is now the truth. It will never not be the truth. And this is the whole point. This is the process we go through as ethereal beings in this human experience. We are here to go through the process, not to get to the destination. That's just our bodies, our human brains' reward for getting there. I can say I accomplished this. That's my brain. My body doesn't care. My body doesn't need an achievement. What I'm after is the experience so I can have the evolution. That's what my body wants. It doesn't care about the manifested reward or the material reward, whether it be a degree in a certain educational endeavor, or a house because I saved enough money because I went through that process, or a car, or anything material, or a relationship. If I'm striving to find the man of my dreams and I'm doing it, going through this process, and for me, the process is completely ethereal. It is gaining the spiritual backbone, gaining the spiritual foundation of trusting my ethereal self that is preparing me for this reward of this relationship. But my body doesn't care about the man. No offense to this person. It's not about the man, it's about the experience of the man, the experience of true love that I'm going to have with this person. And then the experience of all we're going to do together in this world. That's what my soul is here to do. It is only my humanness that expects a reward for whatever I go through. And that is what I've been able to drop, is my need for some physical validation of what I've learned or gleaned or have ingested or been infused with. It's almost like vocabulary becomes clunky because it doesn't really do the job. And that's why sometimes I struggle to describe what's happening, because it honestly, it is beyond description. And I'm doing the best that I can. And this is something that I was told back when I was still in my lower version of myself, when I went into this job before I became a trainer. I remember the person who was training me saying, "You have a really unique ability to explain difficult concepts or complex concepts." And I'll never forget that, because it really got me interested in becoming a trainer, which I ended up doing, which of course was no mistake. It was part of my journey. It's so interesting to see things as they're happening. I don't have to go into the future and say, "Boy, I wonder if." No, I know that I'm going through these processes to gain this, to evolve. I'm here to evolve. That's why my soul came into this incarnation. What other purpose is there? There's no superficial reason that we're here. Everything that I'm going through is by design. And there's free will, trust me. The free will is an important element of this, because I can go have experiences that are organic and authenticated by what my design for this life is. I'm not going to go do something out of character, because my soul is focusing on this series of challenges and this series of learnings and lessons, which allow for me to ascend above that challenge or that oh my god, this I get excited and I want to slow down, because everything that happens in my life as a challenge is what my soul wanted to experience. But I have free will. I mean, I could at this point decide I don't care what my soul wants to do. I'm going to go off in this other direction. The only problem is that it wouldn't resonate. I wouldn't have the energy to do it. And I think we do that in our lives, don't we? We go on and do things because our brain says we should, because of the body's conditioning by our culture or our beliefs or what was our experiences, whether good or bad. We do what our brain tells us to do because we don't know any better. And we go off and do things that suck the energy out of us. Relationships, jobs, situationships, our culture, our cultural exercises. I'm not this is not negative or positive, but our religions, our everything that we believe, the constructs in our lives that are part of our brain's journey, they all they're here for is for us to break through and for us to understand their purpose, which is to really challenge us. We are here to be challenged. Adversity is what does that, and that's how we grow. So we go through this process every time we deal with something new. We have to go through a process to get to the end of it. And when we get to the end of that process, another process starts. And this was also described in the same series, Initiation, on Gaia TV, as the way our soul evolves. Not just the processes of going through our human evolution, where we were given the opportunity to evolve to some point, and then we go through either another lifetime to continue that evolution or a different life form. as I understand it. And when we get to the point where we have done all we can or all we intend to, then we get to integrate all of it. And this was described so beautifully by this young man, these 4 phases of the soul's journey into a lifetime or a human. And I can only use the human because it's the only one I'm aware of right now is my human life to achieve this, that we come into this life as an initiation. We come into we are birthed into this world. That Mother Earth gives birth to us into this world. So that's our initiation. And then we go through this phase of experimentation, or the experiential phase of our lives, where we go through these processes. And I describe this process as this circular thing, this spiral that we go, it's called the sacred spiral. And we go through this process where when we want something, our brain wants it, and our body, our energy leans us towards it. We take linear steps towards it. We find that adversity gets in our way. That adversity is basically us sending us on the backward end of that spiral, where we're meant to examine our intentions or our goals or ourselves, and then gather the spiritual fortitude to keep going. And when we force our way through this spiral, we break it apart. We basically step out of it, and then we struggle. That's how it works. And that struggle, of course, has its own purpose. Either you go back into the spiral and you take the ride of your body's natural energetic journey through the spiral, which is meant to teach you, to give you the tools that you need to reach your goal. Then you suffer and you struggle. And you have to understand that we're in the struggling phase is when we deal with illness and we deal with all the dis-ease in our body. And the science of manifestation is where I talk about this, that podcast, which came from the Gaia series that I still can't remember the name of. But I'll put it in the footnotes if I have footnotes where you're looking. But so the evolutionary process is exactly the same. We go through a process of a lifetime of learning, and then we get, we evolve from that learning. And then the next time we incarnate, we go through another series of lessons, and then we get to evolve again. If you're looking, I'm using my hand as you can't see it as a spiral when I do this. We go through this spiral of experience, of experimentation. That's what the human life is for. I call it or he actually referred to it, and I also do, and I have, as the experiential phase, where we're experiencing all the things that are teaching us these lessons. And then once we're done with this evolutionary phase, what we do is integrate it. And what I'm doing at this time in this lifetime is integrating everything that I've gone through. And probably for several lifetimes, maybe many, many lifetimes. In this particular lifetime, I'm ready to integrate it. So I'm going through this integration phase where I'm looking above and out and over at everything I experienced in this lifetime. And by no mistake, I've experienced abuse and discontent and disappointment and abandonment and heartbreak and everything else you can imagine. Besides physical maladies, which apparently my soul didn't need to experience that in this lifetime. I have 100% health and wellness and vitality. Although these ascension symptoms they still fuck with me. It's not anything that I need to be concerned about. It's a natural part of this expansion of my body that I've become so acutely aware of, that how the oxygen is working. When I breathe in and oxygen goes in my body, how it activates my cells, and there's so much going on. I'm privileged to know this through the micro learning that I'm doing that ends up as knowing in my body, and it keeps ascending me. It keeps this ascension going, this expansion going, and this integration of everything that I've gone through in this lifetime. I was abused by my mother physically and emotionally, abused by my father sexually. I was abused by my first boyfriend. My second husband was really he gave me just a basket of all these lessons, and it was meant to be that. I mean, he was a one-stop shop basically for me to learn everything else I needed to know about myself in order to get to this integration phase. So thank you again, dear ex-husband. I will cherish you always, and I get emotional when I think about him. Look what he did for me. This was a soul contract that he had to sacrifice so I could evolve. And I know I'm returning the favor I already have. That's how it works. Not in this lifetime, maybe the next. Maybe I already have. I don't know. But again, it gives you this perspective of everything, and it allows you to see the purpose of all of it. And when you're able to see the purpose of everything that you've gone through, you have reached a state of the love frequency, because I can now unconditionally love every person, and I don't see the people anymore. I see the soul. I see the purpose of the soul. That purpose, that soul, my mother's soul, my human mother's soul, my human father's soul's purpose, part of their purpose in their lifetime was to be this low vibrational version of themselves who either had addiction issues or, well, addiction issues. My mother was a violent alcoholic. My father had issues with gambling and, you know, sexual issues with his children. But it doesn't bother me to talk about it. I mean, the whole purpose of this is to talk about it. How do we help each other if we're not honest about who we are? And I see so clearly how that is part of my purpose. It doesn't matter what I've went through. It doesn't matter if it's embarrassing or shameful. I don't feel those things. I never felt any guilt about what my parents did to me, because I knew at some level that it had a purpose, even back then. I never felt guilt. And guilt is the emotion or the demon that keeps us stuck in the lower vibrations, because we do all these things out of guilt. I self-sabotage out of guilt, even though what happened to me had nothing to do with me. I never felt that way. I mean, I'm sure I self-sabotage because of my own soul's purpose. And yes, because of that. But I had an awareness of it at such a deep level, even during the time. I never felt guilt about my parents' actions towards me. I never felt any guilt about anybody who did anything to me that I perceived as negative. And being um not having to experience guilt, and this I believe, and I was talking about this with my daughter, allowed me not to go too deeply into any of the pain. I was able always to see it as kind of having a purpose, even though I didn't know what it was. And I could experience this pain to a level that was important for me to get to where I needed to go, but it didn't overtake me. It didn't take me under, because my soul's intention for this lifetime was to rise above it. So I see the purpose of everything that I've gone through. And it's not just, oh, I get it, I'm cool with it. It's like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you, dear Earth Mother, dear Earth Father, dear first boyfriend. Thank you, dear ex-husband. My gosh. Thank you. Without you as an agitator of my demons, I would never purge them. And we don't slay our dragons, we domesticate them. And this is so important. The darkness in us is so important. And again, I'm learning this through this series, integration. We're here to experience polarity. We say good and evil, we say light and dark, but it's all polarity, and it's all meant to be experienced. We're not meant to overcome darkness. We're meant to integrate it, and then it becomes useful. I would not want my darkness to leave me. It is part of who I am, but I now understand its purpose, so it doesn't hurt me anymore. It doesn't control me anymore. It doesn't direct my life anymore. And by the way, I can see light and dark clearly ahead of me. I can choose now. We're here to have this experience. This polarity is so important. The polarity between our, oh my God, this is a whole nother subject matter. I don't want to go too far off track. But I'm learning this about sexuality because I still need healing sexually. A lot of the abuse that I endured during my lifetime was sexual. My father, I was molested by two other men, or one other man in my life, and I was nearly molested or even raped by another one. And I have been groped before by men when I was a child, and that my ex-husband, of course, the element that caused me to finally break free from him and to break down was related sexually, because he I have to be careful with my language. He didn't abuse me, and I know, forgive anyone who's been abused, but this is just a different perspective. So you have to please appreciate that. The lower vibrational me was abused by this man sexually. He took advantage of me, but the higher vibrational me sees the purpose of it. So it's difficult to blame. But I dealt with sexual abuse from my ex-husband. And then when he finally got tired of hiding, which of course was not a mistake, he was meant to tell me who he was so I would finally let go of him because we were so deeply entangled. He told me, and this was the only thing that he ever said to me that helped me to let go of him, that he didn't feel anything, that sex was all that drove him. That's what he'd had to tell me in order for me to let go. So my sexuality has been a common theme throughout this lifetime, and it's meant to be healed in my future with my counterpart. And I'm not saying that I suffer sexually. I have in my mind I have a sexual a healthy feeling in my body about my sexuality, but I've never been with a man and felt safe or comfortable. So part of my journey with this counterpart in my future, this twin flame, is to be healed sexually. And then he, of course, has elements in his body that need to be healed by me. We are not going into this 100% healed. None of us are ever 100% healed. Then the body would drop away. We wouldn't have a use for it. But the process that I've gone through to get to where I am, there's no mistake. None of it was random. My core wound is my sexuality, and it's something that is yet to be healed in this body. And I can come to terms with it. I mean, I'm happy with my body. I'm comfortable with my body. I masturbate when I want to masturbate. It's not as often as it used to be, but I'm not uncomfortable with my body. I'm not uncomfortable talking about any of this. This is whole purpose of my purpose. But my sexuality has yet to be healed with a partner. And that's in my future because my soul wanted that to be experienced. So I went through all of this abuse in order to get to this point. Do you see what I'm saying? It all has a purpose. So no, I'm not angry at, or I don't feel badly about myself. I don't feel guilt about any of it. I don't feel any shame. I never really have. Although I hid from my own pain, of course I did. That's what we do. So this evolutionary process is the same. We go through this spiral. A lifetime is a spiral where we have all these experiences, and then we get to examine ourselves when we are not incarnated. We go through this. We sit at a table with our soul team and say, okay, what did we learn, and how did this go, and what would we do differently next time? And I want to go back in the next lifetime to have the opposite perspective. And then I incarnate again into this life form, into this human form, and I have a different experience. And then I go through another cycle or spiral of this evolutionary phase. And each time I come out of a lifetime, I'm evolved a little more. And this is what we do. This is what I've come to understand that we are doing. This is what resonates in my body. So there's a spiral process through our evolutionary phase. And what I've gotten to experience in this lifetime is these 4 phases that this beautiful young man discusses, who gave me a vocabulary for what I'm going through in this series called Integration on Gaia TV. Is we come in as initiates. We come into this lifetime as initiates, completely wiped clean of our ethereal knowledge, which is of course broad, because we need a pure experience. If I brought in my knowing, I would know to bystep or sidestep all this pain. It wouldn't be a pure experience. So we erase our knowing. We come in as these babes. We're initiated into this life, and then we start having these experiences. This is the experiential phase. And then what I've been able to experience, and I'm sure many others are going through at this time, because this is a time of planetary awakening. It's not just me. I'm having a unique experience, of course, but it's not just me. Now I'm in the phase of integration. I was given this verbiage from this beautiful young man. I'm in the integration phase, where I get to look and see everything as it is, and I get to understand it. And then what happens is I get to transcend my lower self. I literally ascend energetically out of my lower vibration. And I get to take another step on the evolutionary track. And when this lifetime is over, which I believe is not anytime very soon, because from what I've understood, what I understand from the many, many tarot readings that I have come to embrace as guidance, is I still have a whole nother phase of this lifetime to complete, but it is beyond the experiential. I'm sorry. It's not, I'm still to experience everything, obviously, but it is beyond the lower vibrational experiences that are needed for us to rise above ourselves. The lower vibrational versions ascend above that person. I'm already in that level of ascension. I'm in the phase now where I can experience the rest of this life as a master. I no longer have to struggle. I no longer have to worry. I no longer have to carry concern. But I am still here to experience. So that is what I'm doing. And I honestly struggled with whether struggled is a that's an interesting way to put it. I couldn't decide if I wanted to do a podcast on this incredible thing that happened where I can highlight the process, or this other incredible thing that's been happening to me, which is a whole nother subject, which will be my the next subject matter for the next episode. There's magic happening to me all the time. I'm going through these experiences, and I'm so much more aware of them now because it's my purpose to do this. This incredible thing that's happening to me right now that I'm experiencing, that I'll talk about next time. We are here to have these incredible experiences. And if you try to escape the process, you struggle. So when you see yourself going towards something that you want, whether it's a job or a relationship or some other endeavor, be aware of this process that you're going through. Allow yourself to see it or feel it. And if you can feel in your body any pull, or, if you're being pulled away from what you're doing, pay attention. This is your body's language. She's speaking, they are speaking to you. And then what you do is you let go, and you just let the universe orchestrate this for you. And this is so beautiful, because this is another thing I was told. We're doing all the work in the background, basically, is what they're telling me. All I need to do, once I got through this phase of experiencing the lower dimensional version of myself, once I had the awakening and I went through this beginning of this energetic expansion, which started 2.5 years ago when my ex-husband finally left my house and I could begin to heal. That's when I started writing about it. That's when I started, putting it on paper and documenting it. And then a year later, I started the podcast, which has been about 1.5 years now, where I'm speaking about it because this is more real time. All of this started to happen, this expansion, and now I understand that I've ascended over or above, and I don't want to make it sound better. It's just I'm in a different place now where I don't have to experience that anymore. And my experiences now I'm very aware of, and I can see on such a broad scale what's happening in my life, and I'm meant to experience things. That's what empaths are here to do. So if you're an empath or a deeply empathetic person, This is part of your purpose, is to feel. And yes, it is a double-edged sword as we're going through our experiences, because it's wonderful to feel when it's beautiful and you can really feel beyond anything, everyone else. But when you get hurt, the pain is so much more powerful. And again, it's not an accident. You're meant to go through it. And if you are a deeply empathetic person, you are very powerful. Just know that. Empathy is not a burden. And when you get to the higher dimensions. Let me just put it that way. And I don't know where I am dimensionally, but I do understand from the language in this series that I'm watching that the fifth dimension is where you gain wisdom, where love becomes the shining source in your life, where love becomes who you are. And then wisdom develops or emerges. And again, wisdom is not learned knowledge, it is knowing. It is a trust that you know and you don't need proof. And then the will to go out into the world and to live your life from that place of love and wisdom. That's the design, the overarching design. Once we reach the higher vibrancies, this is what guides us now. Love is what guides me. Love is how I vibrate. But the experiences are going to go on. And until I am guided away from this microphone into a different chapter of my life, that's what I'll continue to do. And I believe that I'm getting these really magical experiences because this is the time for me to do this. And the next one's going to blow your mind, but it's really cool. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to it's 111. I feel complete about what we talked about, the process of evolution, the process of our lives here on this earth, and how much more aware of it I am now, and how much gratitude I feel. It just is emanating out of my body to understand what I'm going through and to have this incredible vantage point to see it all as it is, to integrate it, and then to transcend it. So I'm going to leave you with that. It feels complete when I have to sit and think. I know I'm done. Thank you so much for your attention again, for your presence here with me. It means everything, and I feel so honored and delighted to have this role, whatever it means to you. And I'm so grateful again. Thank you very much, and until next time.